All right. So now we're getting into the point where we actually have to factor trinomials. And these are not the perfect square trinomials. So we have to have some sort of process that we can go through to actually factor this. Luckily, we're going to be able to use factor by grouping and greatest common factor to factor this, but we have to add one extra step. So the step we're actually going to add is AC. We're actually going to do the AC method of factoring. So this AC method of factoring, it's still based on the idea of ax squared plus bx plus c. And this is what where we get our numbers for the quadratic formula from. So in this case, I'm going to look here and I'm going to just label everything. A equals something, B equals something, and C equals something. So my A is a number directly in front of the x squared, so that's just going to be 1. My B is the number and sign in front of my x term, so that's going to be negative 7. And my C is going to be 12. So the AC method of factoring gets its name because we're going to do A times C. So I'm going to do 1 times 12. So 1 times 12. And this equals 12. Now this is going to tell me something right off the bat. Because this number is positive, when I look for my factors, they're going to have the same sign. It's either going to be a minus minus or a plus plus. That's the only way we can get a positive number is if we do a positive times a positive or a negative times a negative. Also, because this is minus, whatever sign this is, actually tells me what I'm actually looking for. So what I'm going to do with this 12 is I'm going to write out all of the factors. So I'm going to write plus or minus 1, plus or minus 12. Plus or minus 2, plus or minus 6, plus or minus 3, plus or minus 4. Now, when these numbers get really close, so they're right next to each other, then you know your list is done. That's why I start at 1 and I work my way down, because then I should be able to work my way back up to get all of my factors. So it's a nice little way to stay organized. So really what I'm going to do now is I'm going to look at these factors, and I'm going to say, which one of these adds up to my B at negative 7? Well, it has to be the same sign, and it's going to have to be a negative. So it's going to be my negative 3 and my negative 4. So now what do I do with these numbers? What I'm going to do with these numbers is I'm going to insert them into this equation in a special way so that we can then factor by grouping. So I'm going to rewrite this. I have x squared minus 7x plus 12. And here's what we're going to do. I am going to split this 7x up. So I'm going to have my x squared. I'm going to split this negative 7x up into these two terms. Negative 3x, a negative 4x. It does not matter what order you write them in, because if you do it correctly, you'll get the right answer regardless of how you actually write these. And then I have my plus 12. I kind of space them out like this because sometimes I have to put a plus here. There's times where if it's all opposite signs, I'll always put my negative first so I don't have to worry about my signs. But because here I have a negative and a negative, if from factor by grouping, we know we're going to have a plus. But now we have 4 terms. We can factor by grouping. The AC part of the AC method is done. Now we can factor by grouping. We group my first 2. Because I have a negative, I have to add negative numbers, and I group my second 2. Take out the greatest common factor. What does x squared and minus 3x have in common? Well, that's just an x. We're going to take this out. We have an x, and that leaves me with x, when I divide out my x, minus 3. Now here I have a negative 4x plus 12. When there's a negative, always factor a negative out. So I have a negative 4 and 12. They have negative 4 in common. They sure do. So I can have my negative 4, and when I divide out my negative 4, I'm going to get, x minus 3. Hey, look, when we factor by grouping, we've got another greatest common factor. We factor that out. X minus 3, x minus 4 is what's left, and now you are factored, and that is all there is to the AC method of factoring. Key here is A times C. Identify your A times your C. If it is a positive, you know your signs have to be the same, and this will actually tell you what your sign is, the minus. So I know I'm going to have 2 negative numbers. Once you do A times C, list out all the factors. I'm looking for the negative numbers that add up to negative 7. Split your middle term, factor by grouping, TCF. And there's the bell. And we're done. That's AC method of factoring. I'm going to show you one when A is not 1. Hi, I'm Mr. Buzzard, and these videos are supplemental instruction for my students. If you found the video enjoyable, make sure you click the like button and click subscribe, as well as the bell for notifications to receive future videos on high school mathematics.